What if the vibrant life of a 17-year-old girl was tragically ended by someone she met online? Bianca Devins was full of promise, but her story took a dark turn when she crossed paths with Brandon Clark on Instagram. His obsession led to a horrifying act of violence that shocked the world. Stay tuned as I unravel the chilling details of a night that began with a concert and ended in a gruesome murder, with photos of her lifeless body shared online. This is the harrowing story of Bianca Devins. Her life, her dreams, and the tragic end that no one saw coming. So the very first thing that I have to establish is that she was by no means famous. The media kind of portrayed her as being an influencer and very popular online. This is not the case. She had about 2,000 Instagram followers that were mostly friends, family, and some fans. I'll get to that. But it was only after her murder, when all of these photos were released online, that her Instagram following count skyrocketed to about 75,000. She was popular online, yes, to some degree and to a very small audience, but she was by no means famous. Bianca Devins was born October 2nd, 2001 to father Mike and mother Kim. Mike was apparently quite abusive, and Kim tried her absolute best to be the best mom that she could be. Her and Bianca were best friends. Throughout Bianca's first few years across primary school, she did great. She was very well liked. She had a bunch of friends, and everybody who knew her back then described her as being incredibly kind and incredibly caring, with many people saying that she was the only person who really got to know them for who they are. And it was only when she went to middle school that things kind of changed. She became a little bit more difficult to deal with from a behavioral aspect, and she kind of just changed overnight. She became very nervous about going outside. She would suffer from things like panic attacks when it comes to just socializing with other people. And eventually she was taken to therapy. When she joined middle school, she went to therapy and she was diagnosed with PTSD and borderline personality disorder. During this time that was obviously super difficult for her to kind of go through, middle school was not simple. She stopped socializing with her friends and she kind of lost all of the in real life people that she would associate with. And it was at that point where she decided that it just wasn't for her anymore. She started having these big panic attacks when she would go outside. Loud noises would just trigger something. And eventually her mom just said, nah, no more. We're going to take her out of school and we're going to homeschool her. Because she was being homeschooled, she didn't have access to a lot of friends outside of this. And she became super duper invested into meme culture. And she was just perpetually online. She frequented a whole bunch of different websites like 9gag and Discord. And she eventually started creating all these different accounts with different people's faces and different personality types and different names. And throughout all of these, she would explore all these different avenues of who she thinks she could be or who she could be in a separate life. In a bunch of these accounts, she would talk about how she struggles with self-harm, how she struggles with eating disorders, how she struggles with drug use, all across these different names and different faces and different accounts. And in the end, it was kind of established that these were all fake in the sense. She was trying to kind of find herself and was using the internet as a means to do so. And the internet can be a scary place sometimes. When it comes to bullying, she was bullied all the time. People called her a sociopath and say that she was creating all these different personalities for the attention. And that is when she discovered 4chan. Now, if you've ever heard of 4chan, you know that it is just an entire beast by itself. It's completely anonymous and it's widely used. So it can be incredibly interesting at times, but it can also be incredibly crazy at times. Most of the user bases are male. And think about this young girl who starts then posting on 4chan. A lot of dudes became obsessed with her. She was kind of in drips and drabs revealing her identity as Bianca Devins, and a bunch of dudes just became obsessed with who she was. So this is a concept called orbiting and orbiters. And it's as simple as it sounds. You'll meet someone online and then you'll just start revolving your life around them. And even though you never meet them, there's no explicit agreement that you guys are dating, you'll start sending them things like stuffed animals and money, and just think to yourself that you guys are dating. And this happened to Bianca a lot. A lot of dudes became obsessed with her. And sometimes this stuff can get dangerous. There's been numerous accounts where girls have been sent things like drugs in the mail, or they'll get doxxed and then someone will show up at their house and go, "It's me, what's up, baby? Yeah, it's me. I've sent you like 17 comments over the last month. Are we gonna get married or what?" It can get really weird. That is when things started going a little bit south. Bianca Devins meets this guy online. She's 15 and he's 18. His name has never really been released to the public, but we'll call him John. And her and John start dating, and straight away, it's an incredibly negative and toxic relationship. Her mum described it as just feeding off of each other's really negative energy and just being super, super terrible for one another. He was a total asshole as well. The first time that they broke up, he leaked their sex tape and nude photos of her. Straight away, the mom and Bianca go to the police and they pursue charges because this is revenge porn. This could even potentially be CP because she's still 15, which it then was. Eventually, police start investigating and he just has this huge mental breakdown. He goes, "I'm so sorry, please. I didn't realize what I was doing. This is about to ruin my life. And then Bianca actually feels sorry for him. So she stops collaborating with the police and she stops working with them and she tries to get the charges dropped. Eventually, she gets back together with him and then she tries to run away. A lot of negative things. He was like bringing out the worst in her and she tries to run away with him. She then comes back and then the mum, in an effort to just try and maintain her daughter, puts a protective order on Bianca so that she has to wear an ankle monitor. She then cuts it off and then runs away with John again for the third time. And that is when the mom was just like, this is just way too much. Eventually, she gets sent to a place called the St. Anne facility, which is a mental health facility in New York. And she was kept there for a numerous amount of months. And in the beginning, it probably wasn't that great. She probably didn't want to be there. But ever so slowly, she got better. And she started realizing where her life was going and what she wanted to do. And she really started making huge strides in repairing her mental health and being on the right path going forward. After a further few months, she came back and she was going in a really good direction. She was living with her mom again and she knew that she wanted to go to university. She wanted to study psychology and things were looking really bright. And then she meets Brandon Clark. Brandon Clark is a freak if there ever was one. So he had a very troubled past. So his father, Jason, was once arrested for holding Brandon's mom hostage with a knife. I mean, Jason had to kind of see this sort of behavior growing up. I'm not excusing anything, but he did have a very troubled past. This kind of led to really creepy behaviors from his side. He had a huge obsession with lolicon, which is Japanese anime depicting underage girls. He had read like thousands of hours of different magazines featuring these sorts of images. So he was already a bit of a weirdo, you know. He then meets Bianca Devins over Instagram and almost straight away becomes obsessed. He would comment on all of her posts. As soon as she would put up a new photo, he'd say things like, "Oh my gosh, you're so beautiful. I'm so grateful to have someone like you in my life." And she'd be like, "Oh, thank you. That's so kind of you. You're the best." And she was very open and upfront with him that she would be happy to be his friend, but she wasn't looking for a relationship. He just didn't care. In our new age of dating, if you spend enough time talking to someone online, chances are you could think to yourself that you're dating this person, which is exactly what happened. The two of them became in real life friends and they met up, and Brandon eventually even meets Bianca's mum. And she thought that he was quite nice because he put up this facade and he was a real big gentleman, and she thought, okay, he's a nice enough guy. But then Brandon starts referring to himself as Bianca's boyfriend to like family and friends. And Bianca up until this point has been very vocal about not wanting to date, and she just kind of dismisses these comments and thinks that it's just funny and it's just fun, until Kim, Bianca's mom, sits Bianca down and goes, "I need you to understand that this boy is starting to become more and more obsessed with you. Maybe it's a good idea to just distance yourself a little bit." Bianca gives him the benefit of the doubt. She goes, no, Mom, it's totally fine. It's probably nothing to worry about. And the two of them go on this weird journey where they are friends, but he's still madly obsessed with her. And she's been very vocal about not wanting anything, but he's still pursuing her, but she's just happy to be around him. Things get a little bit awkward, but nothing weird. Eventually, she meets a guy called Alex online. Alex is a little bit older than her, and he's very different to Brandon. He's very sweet and very kind and endearing, and he had never been kissed before. She thought that this was adorable, and she wanted to get to know Alex a little bit more. Eventually, the two of them kind of talk online, and they arrange to meet up at a concert. Brandon offers to take her to this concert, and she wanted to be upfront with Brandon because of the fact that he's driving, and she told him, I'm going to be meeting up with a guy called Alex there. Do you have a problem with this? Because if you do, that's fine. I know how you feel about me, and I'd be happy to make my own way to the concert. Brandon goes, no, I'm totally fine with it. No problem. You know, we're just friends anyway, aren't we? So it's all good. But even though he said that, he was pissed. He goes home and he buys a hunting knife and a rope and a tarp. And he starts Googling crazy shit like how to find someone's carotid artery. That's the thing in the neck that makes you not die. So the concert finishes and he goes to pick up Bianca. Bianca comes outside with Alex. She gives Alex a kiss in front of Brandon before she gets in the car. When she gets in, Brandon doesn't say a word. He just goes off and drives her home. But it's a pretty long drive, so eventually Bianca falls asleep. When he sees this, he pulls off, does a detour, and just pulls up into this abandoned road in the middle of nowhere. He then gets out and he starts filming with this phone. And he goes and he grabs his hunting knife. And he comes back into the car and he just wakes her up while he's filming. And he goes, did you kiss that guy? Did you kiss that guy? And she gets woken up and she's obviously, as you would be, super defensive. And she goes, what do you mean? What is it to you? We're not dating anyway. I've told you we're not dating. And while she's talking, he takes his fist and he punches her in her face. And she goes back and she's like, what the hell was that? And she starts trying to open the door and saying, that's it, I'm going to walk home. And while she's opening the door, quicker than you can even say murder, he takes his hunting knife and he stabs her in the throat and pulls it and severs her whole neck here. And this was all filmed, by the way. People who had seen that footage said that it happened almost instantaneously. She barely knew what was going on. So the video then cuts right after he slits her throat. The video cuts and almost immediately he starts filming again and he captures her last moments and her last dying breaths. He then takes a photo of her corpse and he starts posting it online on Discord and he captions it with the title, sorry fuckers, you'll have to find someone else to orbit. These photos and these videos then go insanely viral. A bunch of people in this Discord originally just think it's fake, and it looks quite a lot like Bianca, but I've seen these photos. It's the most disgusting and heartbreaking thing. Like, it kind of looks like her, but it just looks like this really empty, awful, blood-drained human being. Like, it's so vile to look at a corpse. And originally people think that it's fake. And eventually he goes, nah, this was me. I did this. And these videos and these photos just, poof, explode. All over Instagram and all over Twitter. It just almost instantly becomes worldwide news. The Discord starts calling the police, but nobody knows exactly where he is. He just gets out of the car and he builds this big bonfire in the middle of the woods. And he listens to Test Drive by Joji, which is a good song, by the way. And he starts burning all of his personal belongings. Like, he brought his computer with and his hard drives and his notebooks because he knew that he wanted to kind of end it all there. It then came out that he had updated his Instagram bio with that date, implying that it would be the date of his death. Nobody can figure out where anybody is. The cops at this point know, but nobody can locate him. At 7:30 the next morning, he then calls 911 and he says, listen, I did it. I've killed her, and this is going to be a murder-suicide, but you better hurry up because I have to get going. because I've done the murder, but I'm now going to do the suicide. Obviously saying that he wants to kill himself. Eventually, the police figure out where he is because he tells them, and then they show up, and he gets out, and he takes his hunting knife, and he thought that the cops, as soon as he threatened to hurt himself, would intervene and stop him from doing it. So he starts cutting his own neck. And the cops are just looking at him like, what is this dude doing? And he starts cutting his own neck, but then eventually stops because it was too painful. These photos are all just going viral at this point. This beautiful girl who was so young just has all of these graphic images circulated on different platforms. So Brandon's arrested, and throughout the trial, he was very adamant about how he was a beta male and he wasn't going to take rejection kindly and nobody was going to reject me. And eventually he was jailed for 25 years. But the public reaction to this killing is insane. When I was doing research on this video, I found all these different forums where you had people on either side of the spectrum when it comes to blame. Some people blamed Bianca and called her, I kid you not, a man-eater who deserved it because she led a guy on. And it's like, what? How can you possibly think that? This girl is like 17 years old. And you understandably have people on the other side saying that Brandon was just a lunatic who just became absolutely obsessed with this girl. It's nuts to see how the internet can just be completely spread into different pieces when it comes to these sorts of things. So Kim, Bianca's mom, still to this day posts a lot of beautiful and touching images about her daughter in tribute. And it's awful. It's just, this is one of the saddest cases that I've ever heard of in my life. And I saw those images. I accidentally saw them when I was doing research on this video. And trust me when I say, to see a human being, a lovely, beautiful human being like Bianca Devins, desecrated and mutilated in this sort of sense, it makes you feel sick. Nobody deserves that. She had gone through so much in her life, and she was on her way to a beautiful and bright and very different future, and it was all just cut short by that prick. Sometimes the internet can be scary. Bianca Devins did not deserve to lose her life at the age of 17. I beg you, if you are out there and you are communicating with people online, please be careful, because you never know when it could be a madman.